Welcome back to Nigeria2015 studios here on Channels Television. We're still looking at the new CEO. That's the president-elect, General Muhammadu Buhari, I beg your pardon. And of course, we've been having conversations about how the markets are reacting and taking it from the task ahead. But more specifically, now we know that the country has entered a new phase of political history. And top on a lot of minds now is, will it deliver Commonwealth? Of course, Bosun mentioned that most of what's going on is that everybody's looking at how we can consolidate on what's already on ground and how we can move forward. There's so many issues on ground. Finally, we're joined in the studios by an economist and the managing director of Financial Derivatives Company Limited, Mr. Bismarck Rwani. Mr. Rwani, thank you so much for joining us in the studios. Interesting times now for the economy, especially since we're having it not as rosy as would have expected. We're seeing a lot of downsides, a lot of headwinds hitting the economy. What are your thoughts?
First and foremost, the fact that there's some certainty increases the premium and makes the economy better. Okay, so like I always said, bad news is better than no news. And in this particular case, it's good news. So you're moving from no news through the transition of bad news to good news. Now, what you have to understand is that General Buhari is going to be like the CEO of a company who is taking over a new task. He's also like the son of a man whose father has just died, and you have to sit up and face the reality. 3 documents will be presented to the president on day 1. One is his bank statement. That's the Nigerian bank statement. How much do we have? 2 is a checkbook. And 3 is cash flow. So the problem with a checkbook is that you can't write a check which doesn't have cash in the bank statement. So he will have to determine very quickly what the gap is and tell the Nigerian public the reality, because there's a crisis of false expectations.
Now, looking at this next CEO, let's analyze him, looking at his precedents. Who he was and what he's done in the past. We know that at some point he was appointed Federal Commissioner for Petroleum and Natural Resources in 1976. Now, he has a forehand knowledge already of what we're capable of doing with our oil resources.
Yes, but you see, 1976 is a long time ago. So the thing is that General Buhari will be operating in 2015.
Well, we have oil prices falling.
Yeah, and his experience. But the oil prices today are 4 times higher than the oil price when he was Petroleum Commissioner. Okay? So let's go back to specifics. General Buhari will be judged on 1, governance. In terms of governance, because of his stringent approach to integrity and honesty and anti-corruption, positive governance. 2, oil and gas, because of his experience and because the oil and gas industry like people who are stable and who are consistent, who have integrity, positive. He would go to the petroleum industry bill and do that. So Nigeria needs investment dollars as well as production dollars. You can be sure that that's going to happen. And then the leakages in that area are going to stop. Okay, so that's positive, oil and gas. Fiscal. Fiscal is revenues, taxes, and how you manage. Fiscal will be neutral, because you can't spend money that you don't have. So he has to make up his mind as to whether he's going to fund the gap by borrowing, by running down reserves, or whatever. So fiscal is going to be neutral. And at that point, you're going to have to differentiate between an economic patriot, which Buhari is, and he has to transfer himself from being an economic patriot to becoming an economic realist. The reality is you can't spend money you don't have. And economies are not run by wishes. They're run by practical issues. Okay. Monetary policy. The central bank said they have to manage monetary policy, interest rates, exchange rates, and reserves. In that case, we say it's positive, because we've done the worst has happened, and then we have to come out of that. Regulations and taxes. I think that that's going to be positive, because Buhari will have 0 tolerance for bad behavior. Therefore, so the regulatory framework and taxes are going to be positive. Investments, people have to see. That is where, at this point, to be neutral. Investments, people are going to say domestic and international investment. You have to create a business environment which will allow people invest. And I would say Buhari will be consistent, and he'll be working in the best interest of the Nigerian people. But you see, this is a market-driven world. Many of the things have changed. Nigeria, I think, is going to be having to borrow money in the next year or two, and Nigeria as a debtor nation will have to behave itself differently from Nigeria as a creditor nation. Infrastructure, the entire power reform thing has to be looked at to bring some integrity into the process. Roads, no question about it, roads and rail infrastructure, and then refinancing the activities in the northeast of Nigeria. Because you see, General de Gaulle came back into, just like this, General de Gaulle came back to run France during the peak of the Algerian Civil War. He was 68 years old. He ran it, and he ran it successfully. So here is General Buhari coming back at the age of 72 to run in the middle of insurgency and terrorism in the northeast, and going to have to encourage and invest in the Niger Delta. Those are key issues, and that's my first take on this whole issue right now.
Well, quite a dissection, Mr. Wade. Thank you for that. But let's the positives and the neutrals. I didn't hear any negative on your list. So we're looking at a little bit of between buy, hold, and sell scenario. If it's a market, we're taking it. So if we look at the new president-elect as a stock or as an asset, the Nigerians will have to invest trust, confidence, and everyone around the world will have to invest in. So we'll have to look at whether the new president was going to be a buy, a hold, or a sell.
Okay. Let me come in here. The Nigerian economy is like a barrel of oil. Selling it for $100. The first $35, from what I understand, of Nigerian oil revenues are either stolen in oil or stolen in money. Okay? Another $25 is wasted through inefficiency. Therefore, Nigeria has been running actually on $45 a barrel.
Net.
Net. That was what Nigeria was running on, because 35 was stolen, 25 was wasted. So even if the price of oil is at $55, Nigeria doesn't lose anything. That's what we are getting anyway. So it's not as bad as you think.
So the price of oil right now is actually a plus for the country.
It's a plus, because if you discount the stolen oil and the wasted oil, what you are doing, if you can use what you have efficiently, nobody will notice any difference.
So let's turn that around a little bit. So if we have 100% of these assets indicated, that means we have all it takes to have an El Dorado economy.
Well, I don't know. Nigeria is not oil rich. Nigeria is oil poor. You have 12,000 barrels of oil for 1 million people here. There are 295,000 barrels of oil for 1 million people in Saudi Arabia. This is not an oil-rich country. This country has a lot of things to do. It has an infrastructure gap of about almost $400 billion. And we have reserves of $29 billion. So we have our work cut out for us. This is not going to be an easy ride. No other person to do it than somebody who's focused and knows that he's not going to help himself at this point in time.
Mr. Rowan, the environment, I mean, he's coming into, well, murky water, so to speak. A lot of things distracting him. You talked about a business environment, an investment environment that's conducive for the investor, the monetary policy, cash flow, and all of that. How is he going to be looking at all of this to ensure a diversified economy that is not too rich in oil, but rich in so many other things that are not being maximized, so to speak?
I think the first thing to know is that not what you are going to do, is what you cannot do. You see, when somebody comes to you and says, I have all these ideas, first question you have to say, what are the things you are willing to give up? So General Buhari has to decide the things he's going to give up for Nigeria. Nigeria has to make some conscious decisions that you can't do all of these things. Nigeria has a debt profile now, external debt profile, which is disturbing. We have external debt in the neighborhood of $24 to $26 billion, and with reserves of $29 billion. In 2008, your total external debt was $10 billion, and your reserves were $58 billion. So you are likely to be using 25% of your cash flow to service debt. So there's not that much. So the options are pretty now. You see, the best decisions in life when you check people, are made by those who are on death row, who have very limited options, and they are very efficient. The worst decisions by human beings are made by those who win the lottery, right? Because they come into money they didn't expect to make, and then they buy 10 cars, 10 wristwatches, and all that because they don't know. You see, it confuses their minds. Nigeria now, under financial pressure, is going to make this. Nigeria is like on death row. They're going to make a lot of efficient decisions, and those efficient decisions will benefit the people. Because in spite of all of these things we're talking about, the people have not actually got a feel. The quality of life is still, difficult.
So at this point now, when he comes in, he's hitting the ground running. What should he be focusing on? Because we have a structure already in place, and the structure works in tandem with the economy. The economy will not stop for the structure to be fixed. So the structure and the economy have to work hand in hand. And whatever it is that you do, you can't drop any balls.
No, let me tell you what it's going to happen.
Just before you answer, may I quickly cut in here very quickly? What this actually really is this: the structure is about the administration.
Yes.
He's a CEO, but he's not going to run the cabinet all alone. So he's going to have his. He came into power on the table of a party. So we're talking about the ruling party now. The machinery that he would have to deploy to deliver.
No, let me answer that. The truth is that as a CEO, he's going to be sending signals. He's going to set a tone, right? He's not going to go into details. He will set a tone and assemble a team. The team will work on assumptions. Don't forget that you have a party that is 1 year old that has displaced a party that's 16 years old, right? So a 1 year old child, you have to actually feed that child. The child has no teeth right now, so he's going to give teeth in powder, all those things. So that party and that party has to run the country. But it's better to do that than to have a spoiled child. Okay, that's right. So you have a 16-year-old spoiled child, and you have a 1 year old child that has not been shown. Even though it's an adopted child, basically, because it was a combination of parties that were in existence. So I think that is number one. The most important thing is assembling a team.
So now, in assembling that team, should you focus on administrators? Should you focus on technocrats? Should you focus on people here on the domestic soil, or look at technocrats or even administrators who are coming from the diaspora?
Or politicians.
There'll be 4 pillars. You need politicians to build the party. You need technocrats to run the economy. You need seasoned military and retired military people to run the defense, because we have a security issue in the northeast. And then you need petroleum people. It's not just technocrat. Petroleum, being a technocrat in the petroleum industry is different from being a technocrat in finance. So he was Minister of Petroleum before in the 70s. He knows where the bodies are buried. He knows the people. He's going to have to bring a lot of people out of retirement into the petroleum industry to fix this thing, so that you have, like I said, you have investment dollars, right, and you have production dollars. We have to go into all of the OMLs and all of these things that were done. There are so many things that need to be fixed, right? So he will have 4 or 5, he will have a council of economic advisors, right, who will be looking at monetary and fiscal policy coordination. All of this aimed at achieving one thing, that is lifting the economic well-being of the people. This is a country with a misery index that is very high, income inequality that is high, and things are skewed. And it's a natural wealth-dependent economy, not a production wealth economy. So all of these things are going to be done, and you are not going to achieve this in a short period. It's just going to have to set a tone. This journey is going to take Nigeria maybe 20-something years. This is just the beginning of that journey. Some of the foundation stones are laid. Let us not say that the team that were there before did nothing. They did some things, right? So you take some of the good things, build on it, and move forward, right? But the thing is that you must move forward and make some hard choices.
So you're making those hard choices and looking at the foundation that this administration has already laid. I'll still go back to that question I asked. Which areas should the focus begin to be on?
Okay, number one, infrastructure, road and rail infrastructure. Because whatever you produce, things have to get to the market, and raw materials have to get to the production plants. Power, which everybody knows. you have to restructure the entire power thing so that there's no question. The fact that you privatize power does not necessarily mean that you're going to have power. We've seen it. 3 years ago, we are having no power privatization taking place. So you've got to restructure that entire area. Okay, so rail, road, power, refining, right, port infrastructure. Once you do that, then you begin to invest also, working with the states, invest in education and health and all. So, but now the question is that how do you prioritize? This is a wish list. I can sit down and list out 100 things. How are you going to fund it? So you have to decide which of these things you are going to defer and which of these things you are going to give up for now, because you have very limited resources. And I don't want to underestimate this, because the mental adjustment to accept that you are a former rich man is very difficult. People never want to accept it. They want to eat what they were eating yesterday when their incomes have come down.
Okay,
so that's a big thing.
Let's quickly hold on to our thoughts. We'll come back and continue this conversation. We're still live in the Nigeria 2015 studio. We're looking at we're analyzing actually the next CEO of this enterprise called Nigeria. We're still going to be here in just a moment.